Hey yo, it's the Mayo Show with Brett Mayerson. Hello everyone, welcome to episode 4 of the Mayo Show. I'm your host, Brett Mayerson. We have a very special guest today. We're going to go with the local news walk of life now. We are now going to be talking to local reporter and anchor Elise Kim. She's at WDVM in the Washington, D.C. area. Elise, what's up?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. Elise and I go way back, actually. She was a reporter in Elmira, New York when I was an intern there. So I've known Elise for quite a while now. You made quite a significant jump from Elmira to DC. Like,
Mhm.
holy cow. So obviously today we'll talk to you a little about your journey in the world of news and what your future goals are and what it's like, of course, reporting in the nation's capital. So you don't live in DC, but you're like right outside and all the big news is coming right to you. So that's got to be kind of fun. So for everyone that is, maybe trying to become a journalist, was your journey like?
I would say my journey was pretty atypical. I know that a lot of people that my professor brought in while we were still in school, they would talk about their journeys and getting into journalism and like becoming a reporter. And I would say mine didn't really align with a lot of what people were saying. So just to put it into perspective, people who would come in to just be guest speakers for our classes, they would mention applying for maybe like 50 jobs and then hearing back from like 10 or something like that. Just really having a hard time getting your foot in the door, especially as a reporter. So right before I was about to graduate, I'm sure you remember him, but Ty from WETM,
Mhm.
he had reached out to me and he said, I know you and this one other girl are graduating in December. We are having an opening, so if you would like to apply, I'll put in a good word for you and then, see how that goes. So of course, around graduation, I was being very lazy and I didn't really look for any jobs at that time. So I was just like, okay, whatever. Let's just try this opportunity, see where it takes me. So I took his recommendation. I applied, and it just worked out because the other girl, she had to take another semester. So I think I was the only one who applied out of the two of us, and I don't know how many others applied. But since he already worked at the station, I'm sure he was able to put in a good referral. And then um, my boss called me. Well, my soon-to-be boss called me, Mark Silverstein, if you remember him, and he gave me about 48 hours to make a decision. So within the span of 2 days, my life really changed. Where I was living in Virginia after graduation. Well, not after graduation. I was living in Virginia because I finished up one last semester at that time, and then all of a sudden I got a job in Elmira, New York, and was able to switch gears, get that job, and work there for a bit. And that's how you and I met.
Exactly. So you went to VCU, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of in a civilization area. So you went from seeing a lot of people every day, and you're from Virginia originally. So you went there, and now you ended up in middle of nowhere, upstate New York,
Mm-hmm.
and parts of Pennsylvania. And now you are in a market that a lot of people wish they could be in. So you're also anchoring now, right? You're not just reporting. So you're anchoring a lot now from what I see when you post. So what's that like when you're at Elmira for 2, 3 years and then you're like, I'm gonna move up now, and then you finally get there and you realize like, holy cow, like I just jumped up like over 100 markets.
It wasn't anything jarring because uh, what I would say is that make sure you do your research regarding like your market or your next move because, well, I knew going into this that WDVM wasn't like a legit market nine. Like most of our reporting and most of what we were doing was in Hagerstown. Um, yes, we are like slowly transitioning into DC, but all of that is like very much so under wraps, so I can't talk too much on that. Um, but even I guess like the only really big difference between reporting in Elmira versus reporting in DC was the fact that this station has a quota. So I have to at least turn 2 to 3 stories a day. And then on top of that, uh, this station, like since it does cover the DMV area, I have to cover the whole area. So not even though I'm like a reporter in Virginia, I will be driving into DC to turn stories, and I'll also be driving into Maryland to turn stories. So that was a lot to take in.
So now you're going to 3 places instead of just 2 states. So that's
Mhm.
that's also got to kind of be interesting though, because like, you kind of become like a regular. It's like, oh, I'll be there right. It's like, oh, you're right by the White House. Okay, cool. Like I'll be at your apartment to film the story as soon as I'm done over here in Maryland. And it's like kind of a weird thing to say because they're all on top of each other. So like that's got to be kind of a fun thing. A lot of miles on your car, probably.
Thankfully, they have a lot of company cars here
I
that are
should
in.
say the station car, probably
Yeah.
putting a lot of miles on that thing
Yeah.
between driving through 3 areas. So you're right by DC. So a lot of the big national stories that local outlets pick up are coming probably straight to you guys because you're right there. So what's that like being kind of near the White House and being able to kind of like be like probably one of the first local markets to pick up a big story that's affecting everyone in every small town in the country?
I wish I could tell you more about reporting political news and stuff about the White House, but honestly, most of my reporting, while I was reporting, was uh, more coronavirus based. Back when COVID was really crazy last year, and then towards the end of last year, I switched over to digital producing. So I guess I could talk a little bit more about digital producing as far as like breaking news and things that are happening. But on the digital end of things, we just, whenever we get some wind of anything happening at the White House or anything big with the DMV governors or mayors, we just try to get it up as soon as possible, but also as accurately as possible. So I guess that's the way we handle breaking news at our station.
It's probably more of a standard to get things accurate and right as possible too, because of where you're located, because that's where the country's news comes out of. So you're
Right.
probably do you feel like you guys are under more pressure to get things right and get things out as quickly as possible because of where you're located?
Oh yeah, for sure. And then what I'm realizing is, even on the digital end of things, what I produce or what I come up with, it's being seen by so many more people because sometimes we get share requests from across the nation where they're like, "Hey, can you share this article with us?" And then if there is some sort of like error in the article, then it matters that much more because it's going to be put out to all of the articles that it's been shared to. So that's a hurdle that I've been learning to overcome with this.
Of course. So obviously the TV, you said you're doing digital producing now too. The TV and news and everything is starting to go extremely digital now, and which is causing some people in the industry to, I should say, not be needed, even though we don't really like to go that way. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you today was it's also costing a lot of camera people their positions because people realize that one person can do everything from filming to writing and editing to digital. So is that something you like or don't like that the industry's heading that way? Are you allowed to speak on that? I mean, like, do you, because I know that like obviously when you were in Elmira, there was only like 2 camera people, and now people are saying that even the big markets are going to probably get rid of those people here in like in the future with the digital
Yeah.
upon us.
Uh-huh. I like how you bring up this topic because I think more people outside of the industry should know about this. But I strongly don't like the way the industry is going. Even with the whole MMJ situation, like learning it in school, I was like, okay, this is cool. Like I learned all of these different skills, but I didn't know while learning that in school that they were like teaching me all of these skills just so that they could utilize one worker to work 5 jobs, which is essentially what everybody is doing these days in the news industry. And even like that situation towards the end of, I think it was towards the end of last year or the beginning of this year, where that West Virginia reporter got hit by a car because she was MMJing her own live shot in the middle of the
Yes.
night.
I
It
saw
was,
that video. It's a very famous video. For anyone, you can just YouTube search that. Like go YouTube search that if you have not seen it yet, if you're listening to this.
yeah, that was really, it wasn't even surprising. It wasn't shocking because they expect not even just women, but like any sort of reporter to go out to their own live shot, set up their own live shot, and then just go live. And you can't really control anything that's happening outside of your situation. Like if a car were to hit you, even just the way that she reacted was just very, uh, I don't know. I just feel like that could have been a moment where she actually made some change in the industry, where she discussed what needs to be changed about industry standards. But it seemed, I don't know if it was because she was under contract or because her like station was telling her what to say, but it seemed really scripted almost, like how she reacted to that situation.
It did. It definitely did. And, I was a MMJ for a little over a year. And as much as I love being on TV as everyone does, and I love telling people what's going on in their community and doing that work, it's the one thing that no one really trains you for until I wasn't told till maybe my senior year that that was the direction things were heading.
Mhm.
And people at Elmira told me that because, your professors won't tell you that. And they told me they're like, oh, we really only have one camera person because, everyone films this on their own. And I was like, really? That's different, interesting. But
Yeah.
people getting hit by a car, I mean, that did seem really scripted, and I couldn't believe it when I watched it because I'm surprised I didn't get hit by a car any of the times I was shooting live shots. But it's definitely a direction I think is not safe for people because even though something's going digital, people always say, well, what you should do for any industry, if it's like causing things to be affected by technology, then teach them to use the technology. Because the way I think should go is that anyone who's in danger of losing their job because of this move towards digital age, the camera people should be taught to use all the digital stuff. Because then it's like, well, what's the point of having camera people? Because if you think everyone can do that, but one person doing five people's jobs is exhausting, and it's why people are leaving.
Right. And just to put it in perspective, on weekends, even in like a bigger market, I am forced to be working 3 to 5 jobs. So I'm producing, I'm anchoring my own show that I'm producing, I'm reporting for my own show that I am producing, like any sort of breaking news, I'm writing it up myself and possibly like putting together a mugshot for what's going to be running in the news. I was doing digital for that. So all of the stuff that would run in the 6 and 10 p.m. shows, I would clip from the newscast, put it onto the web, approve all of my reporters' web stories. And it's just like, how are you having somebody do 4 jobs and paying them only to work one? Like, that's really not fair.
No, it's not. And I think that with the way things are going, everyone should be paid at least $5,000 to $10,000 more because of what I was making. I was like, okay, I could survive where I'm living, but I definitely couldn't survive anywhere else with what I was making.
And why do you like the thing is, you shouldn't just be paid to survive. You should be paid in order to like live a decent life. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
the salaries that they're paying people right now is competitive. That's why a lot of people are leaving the industry.
Yeah. And the girl who got hit by the car, the worst part about that was her last week. She had literally 3 days left in her job. She was leaving. So to have that happen to you, like 3 days left in your job, I feel like reaffirms her statement saying why she doesn't want to be there. Now, we don't know if she was leaving the industry or if she was just moving stations, but I mean, that could have kind of reaffirmed that.
She was moving stations, but I feel like if I had 3 days left on the job, that would be like an opening for me to actually like speak on what had happened and to make a change for the industry versus just like, I don't know. I don't know if her new job maybe had some sort of contract with her and that's why she couldn't really talk on it, but
Or
it
if it's
just,
the same corporation, could have been the same corporation.
yeah. So that's also really not fair of the industry to do to her.
No, and another thing I want to pick your brain about this too, because it seems like a lot of these giant media conglomerates are buying up local stations. And, you know, for people listening to this later, I'm not talking about Disney. I'm not talking about Universal. I'm not talking about what you hear about when you're watching a kids show. I'm talking about big companies that only own news, like, people like Sinclair Broadcasting, who you might hear of in other stories. And their people are either trying to partner with another company to buy up every station in one region of the country, or they are just buying people up because they have the money to do it. And I think that it gets rid of the small mom and pop companies that own like 3 stations in a region. And I don't think it's good because it makes people a little less accessible, because when you work at a smaller broadcast company, you can kind of access your HR and stuff more if you really need some assistance. And there's usually an HR rep in your office. Whereas when you're owned by a giant corporation, I'm not going to name who my station was owned by because I don't want to get in trouble. But and I just don't think it's necessary. But I think when these giant conglomerates buy people up, it makes people less accessible. And if you have a complaint, then you have to do a phone call, then an email. And I think that sometimes it's purposely done. And I don't know if you're having that same issue because I don't know who owns your station, but it's probably one of these it's probably one of these companies that owns a lot.
For my station, it's pretty easy to
Yeah,
get in touch
exactly.
with
Your
HR.
company's not, yeah, you're not like a giant, massive company, right? That's who, I mean, I think I know who owns you. I don't know if I want to say if you're okay with me saying the name, but
I'd just rather not.
yeah, let's not do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, because you guys, I remember when I was interning at Elmira, there was an HR rep like in the office, which is great. And when my station that I was working at was bought, that HR person became like office manager because they're like, well, if you want to go to HR, you have to pick up the phone and call corporate. I'm like, I think that with that and camera people not being needed is a little bit scary to an upcoming journalist.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like a lot of people who want to go into journalism should really do their research and get in touch with people who are currently in the industry, in the thick of it, so that you know kind of what you're getting into.
Yeah, it's definitely something that people should research. And also, like, are you okay moving to the middle of nowhere before you really make it? Because that's what you're going to have to do. I mean, for me, Elmira, like, wasn't really the middle of nowhere when I was interning there, just because I was going to school at Ithaca and it wasn't so far away. And, upstate New York is a land of its own. But, the DC, Virginia, Maryland area is definitely, a very vast difference from where you were before. Like there are a lot of people there. There are like the national governments there. There are professional sports teams. There are probably there's millions of people living there.
Yeah.
Who are watching your station.
Yeah, I agree. Moving to Elmira was very jarring. Like I grew up in the northern.
It's cool in a sense though, right? It's cool in a sense.
No,
it was never
not.
cool for you.
Nothing about Elmira was cool.
No, I always think it's
don't
cool.
like. No, if I never have to go to Elmira in my life again, I'll be like, that's fine. I never want to visit ever again.
I was just saying cool in the aspect that you got to explore a part of the country that you never saw. So like,
no, it's okay. I could.
And it makes for good stories. It makes for good stories.
Not seen that part of the country, and I would have been 100% fine. Yeah,
it makes for a good story one day.
The only story that I really have is the fact that like all of the restaurants were kind of not that good, and it's like if you were on a road trip and then you like looked up restaurants to eat at, and then you were like, oh, I don't really want to eat there. Those are the types of restaurants that you would find in Elmira because there was nothing to eat, there was nowhere to go. Most of the population was very elderly. And it rained. I mean, it snowed like crazy. I had 2 feet of snow. And during that snowstorm, I had to dig my car out of 2 feet of snow just so that I could make it to work because the news never stops. So that's also a thing that people should keep in mind when they get into the news industry. It's the fact that you don't really have that many days off. And even in severe weather, you're expected to show up.
And even if your contract says you're working these 5 days, if somebody is out, you are most likely taking their shift for that day.
Yes, but okay, so in smaller markets, I can see that happening.
Numerous times that happened to me.
Just depending on your station, it can definitely happen because in Elmira, I remember my boss, he would try to make me work on my days off or try to make me work overtime after I already went home for the day. And you just really have to put your foot down and be like, I'm not doing that. And then they won't bother you anymore. I don't know.
Yeah. See, I like how they encouraged you sometimes to work overtime because when I worked overtime, people used to not really love it. But I was like, well, if you want me to get this story for you, I need to work the overtime. And that's just how this has to go. And I think some people just don't like it because they don't want to pay you more, but that's just, but at the end of the day, I got you a good story. So I'm sorry I clocked in extra time. But I mean, yeah, you really don't have that many days off. You have to request a holiday, and everyone at the company is probably requesting the same holiday, which makes it even more stressful because it's not like you're working in the corporate world where you automatically get that day off. And like you said, the news never stops, which is probably one of the most interesting things about the industry is that, if you're in a small town like in Elmira, or I don't know if you consider Hagerstown a small town, it might be like kind of more of a small atmosphere area of the DVM market. I don't know if that's what you would want to call it, but if it's Christmas and you're working, like, yeah, no one else is in, but guess what? There's a Christmas festival in town and you got to go cover it. And it's like the same thing with Easter. It's like, oh, look, you got to go to the church. They're having a little carnival for the kids.
Right.
Like, it's like there's always something going on. You just have to find it. And it's crazy. And I think that sometimes people don't realize, especially in today's climate, with what's going on with reporters, I think people don't really love the fact that the news never stops, but they also hate how the general public treats reporters nowadays. I think that people just do nothing but trash reporters because of political reasons, and I think it's not okay.
Yeah.
We're just trying to do our jobs here.
Yeah. I've had like numerous instances in Elmira, especially because I feel like it's more of a kind of like a right-leaning area.
It definitely is a very red area.
Yeah. But I've had people just kind of like berate me or like harass me by like coming up to me and being like, "Oh, you work for this company," and just like walk and just insult my company together with me. And I'm like, I'm just here to do my job. I don't know why you think it's okay for you to just like come up to a 20-something-year-old woman just trying to do her job and just insult her for that. And even here in Hagerstown, thankfully, I don't have to report while I'm in Hagerstown. I'm just anchoring. But my reporter had somebody had called her the N word and then started like yelling insults at her.
Whoa, that I did not know.
So even like coming from other minorities, there's more extremes to the media hate.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was working, and you could probably attest to this, is that when I was working in the local news industry, every single reporter is on the company email. So every email that the company is getting, like that the station is getting, I should say, is coming to your computer. And that also includes the general public emailing the station email, either praising something, asking for coverage, or trashing you. And I remember seeing a lot of emails, especially around the election time in 2020 and a little bit post that, say like, cursing us out, calling people insults. And we had a threat one time at the station where we had to have a cop outside the building. Like there's a lot of bad things about the journalism world, but there's a lot of great things about it. And without reporters, where would you get your information from?
Facebook, obviously.
Facebook, exactly. Facebook. I was waiting for you to say something like that. I was like, this is gonna have a really comedic ending. She goes, Facebook. According to a lot of people, Facebook and Twitter, but I really don't believe anything I see on there unless it's from a station. So it's like no one knows, and I also think that no one really knows what's reliable anymore. And I think that's another problem because a lot of opinion stations people take as real information.
Yeah.
Which is like not okay, which when people get us confused, because I worked for a company that was a local NBC affiliate and we had the peacock logo, and people see that and they just assume that I'm NBC News. And I remember I was driving in the company car and someone literally, without saying a word, I was like stopped at a light. He drove past me, looked right at me, and just gave me the middle finger. And I was like, cool, later. I was just like, that's what it's like nowadays for people working in media.
Yeah, you have to have a thick skin.
Yeah, you do. And I mean, I used to get aggravated, but I would never get so aggravated where I would take revenge on people. I would never do that. I'm not that type of person. You know me. But so you're anchoring now too. You were mainly reporting when you were in Elmira. So is it like kind of a different feeling being an anchor and knowing that? Because like when you're anchoring, you're mostly in the office now, right? Like you're not running around as much. So how's that to know that you're kind of feel like you're obviously moving up in the industry?
Maybe it would feel like a big difference if I were just anchoring. but
Mhm.
since I have to work 5 different jobs at once, it is just equally tiring. But I think my mom just got home, so we might have to wrap up soon.
No worries.
Yeah.
No worries. I should ask you this. So where are you trying to go from here? So obviously you're in a really big market now. You're anchoring, you're producing, doing all this really cool stuff. So where do you want to go from here? Do you want to move up again, or is this where you want to stay?
I am most likely going to leave the industry. Um, just even talking about it, like there's no, there's not a lot of positives continuing in the industry. So yeah, that's probably my last stop.
So do you also feel like you've kind of hit your peak too? You're like, I got here, I lived around here, like I can kind of restart my life with a new job if I wanted to.
I think I'm just really realizing that I don't like the way the industry is moving, and that no matter where I'm at, I don't think I'll enjoy it all that much. And the fact that like I have to keep moving around for this job doesn't, like, of course it's interesting and cool to live in different places, but that's kind of all stations really have going for them. Like I was reached out to by a station in Spokane, Washington, and they weren't giving me the pay nor the benefits nor any sort of compensation to move there across the nation, um, to start working there. And their only um, like key thing that they kept telling me was like, oh, it's going to be an adventure. Like you move to a different part of the country that you never lived at. Sorry, my mom's phone is going home.
You're
Yeah, so that's basically it. And I was just like, this is not interesting enough for me to continue in this industry.
Well, is there something that you're hoping to go into after this industry, something that interests you that you want to pursue, that you're passionate?
Something where I'll make more money. So
So there's not. I know you cool because I know you spoke to me a while ago about doing interpreting, and I didn't know if that was something that you wanted to still pursue, if there was something that you're just interested in that you want to do more research on.
we'll have to see. We'll have to see. Yeah,
You better let me know though, because I will post. I'll be like, congrats to Elise.
I will.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you have to go, but I know you didn't have much time today, but I really appreciate you coming on and shedding some light on the local news world. I'm hoping to get someone to be able to talk to us about national, but I wanted to start with local because of how crazy it can get. So thank you so much for being my guest today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, Brett. Anytime.
All right. And for anyone listening, you could find this on Spotify and also on our YouTube channel, Spotify, The Mayo Show, YouTube, The Mayo Show with Brett Mayerson. This is Elise Kim from WDVM News on with me today. She is a reporter, producer, and anchor. And she said she's probably just everything at this point. Like, let's say
Yeah.
she's everything. That's what her business card would say. Elise Kim, everything.
Yeah.
Exactly. She's
Well,
everything.
that's why I'm a multimedia journalist, because that
Exactly.
is what everything is.
Exactly. You should just tell your boss, though, just say, can you write everything on there? Because it sounds cooler than MMJ.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you again so much for coming today. You guys will hear this podcast on Friday, every Friday at 4 p.m., dropping on Spotify and YouTube. Hope you guys enjoy listening to it. And I will talk to you guys next week. Guests to be announced. Take care.
Bye.